everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coast Connections. Coming to you from Nanaimo, BC, the traditional territory of the Sinémue First Nation, where we're privileged and happy to be able to work and live in this wonderful, beautiful territory. Our guest today is a very interesting woman. She is very comfortable in the intergalactic zone as well as the intertidal zone. She knows very well the difference between asteroids and asteroidia, which I had no clue about. We're here to learn about snorkeling. We've got the snorkeling astronomer with us today, and this is going to be fun. Welcome, Dr. Sara Ellison from the University of Victoria. Welcome to Coast Connections.
Hi, Liz. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Did you go for a snorkel today?
I did. I've just got back from a long trip overseas, and it was the perfect way to fight off some jet lag.
I must say I've never fought jet lag that way, but I bet it would be super refreshing. Yeah. Now, Sara, you're an astronomer by day and by night, I would imagine, in an astronomy world. And you're a snorkel enthusiast and a wonderful photographer in your off time. How did you, did the astronomer find the snorkeling, or did the snorkeler find the astronomy? How has this happened for you?
Yes, I think that the two have always been there in tandem. I've been a keen tropical snorkeler my entire adult life, and obviously an astronomer my entire adult life as well. But the snorkeling has really become such a major part of what I do really in the last few years. So during the pandemic, when we couldn't travel overseas and we couldn't even really travel very much domestically, we started spending a lot more time. So my family and I started spending a lot more time doing adventuring and exploring around Vancouver Island. And so this is what really kicked up the cold water snorkeling for me. And so it was turning that hobby into something more serious, which became the book that has really now led to this sort of this dual life, as you say, the snorkeling astronomer.
Mm-hmm. And as you say, you put your passion for snorkeling into pages and produced this most beautiful book, Sara. Congratulations on this. It's Snorkeling Around Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. It's like a destination guide with maps and world-class photography, and printed by Harbour Publishing right here in BC on the Sunshine Coast. So very much made in Canada, very local project. Congratulations on your book. It's a really fun read, even for people who might not want to snorkel. The information in here and the way you've presented is just delightful. So happy to promote your book for you on this.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thanks, Liz.
And your pictures, as I said earlier, are like National Geographic quality, but show us the camera that you actually are using underwater to take some of these.
Yeah, so the truth is I'm really not a particularly knowledgeable photographer. So people are often surprised to see my camera. So I'll show it to you now. It's this little point and shoot. So it's an Olympus TG6. So this is marketed as a kind of just a general outdoor use camera. So the TG stands for tough. So you can drop it and knock it, and you can take it underwater. So I don't have any special lenses on here. I just use the automated settings that's just set on autofocus. And this camera, you can take it down to 15 meters underwater, which is deeper than I usually go. So without any kind of housing. So yeah, all of the photos in the book were taken on this little puppy.
But Sara, how do you keep the film from getting wet?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? So when was the last time we used film? I can't remember.
I can't either. So the gospel of snorkeling, you're here to promote that, your passion. Snorkeling versus diving. There's a lot of diving here on the Pacific coast here, very much so. But we don't hear very much about snorkeling. Like the minute you think snorkel, it's like, ooh, like that's a very cold thing to be doing around our waters. But what are some of the benefits of snorkeling versus diving?
Yeah, so I'm not a diver, so I'll give you the very biased view of the snorkeler. So I think the big advantage of snorkeling is that you don't have the gear. So the gear is bulky, heavy. It's very expensive. If you want to buy a dry suit, this can easily set you back in the thousands of dollars. You also need to take certifications. You need a special certification to be in a dry suit. So this takes time and money. And so it can be somewhat exclusive, I think, whereas the benefit of snorkeling is you need fairly minimal equipment. You do need a wetsuit unless you're extremely hardy. You do need a wetsuit. That's the main thing that you need to, obviously, apart from the mask and the snorkel. And so it's very accessible, and you can enjoy it from anywhere around the island, any beach. You can walk in and enjoy the cold water. But one of the things that I wanted to do with the book was to help people find the good places to go to. So that took quite a bit of research. In terms of the things that you can see, snorkeling versus scuba diving, most of the things that you can see scuba diving, you can also see snorkeling if you get lucky and you persist long enough. There are some species that really do only stay very deep. So things like large sponges you only see when they're very deep. But all of the species of sea stars, the nudibranchs, the anemones, these can pretty much all be seen in the top 10 meters or so. And so if you can develop a little bit of a skill to just dive down a few meters, most of these you can see. So for me, that's where I see the advantage in snorkeling, is that you don't have the gear and the certification, and it makes it very, very accessible.
Now, at the beginning, I mentioned the difference between asteroids and asteroidia, which are what? What is the difference?
Yeah, so an asteroid is a large rock in space, and so there's the main belt of asteroids in our solar system is located between Mars and Jupiter, and then the asteroidia. So this is the Latin name for the sea star family, and we're really blessed in these chilly Pacific Northwest waters that there are some 30 or so different species of sea stars, including some of the largest in the world. So the sunflower star can have a diameter up to a meter across. They can be spectacularly massive. And sea stars are one of my favorite things to see, because they have so many different colors, shapes, and sizes. There's a huge diversity out there.
Sara, we've got a list of some of the asteroidia, sea stars, and the striped Sunstar is one of them. And this has the central blue stripe. It's almost always blue. And we're going to be showing that photo here as well. But what's special about that one, and where can that be found, the striped Sunstar?
Yeah, so the striped sunstars come in quite a range of colors. So as you said, the stripe that goes along the arm is almost always blue. The background color of the rest of the animal can be yellow or orange or even bright pink. So it's quite diverse. In some locations, it's quite common. So actually, where I was this morning, which is in East Zug, I think I probably saw more than a dozen different striped sunstars in different colors. Can also see them quite regularly in Ogden Point in Victoria. So yeah, it's one of those species that is relatively common, but always very beautiful to see.
That striped Sunstar reminded me of the Ukrainian flag. Same colors.
Yeah, exactly. Those colors.
You never know what you're going to find below. You've given us another one of a sunflower star with a blue texture and some rose anemones around that one. And from Alliard Farms, I think this one was from, on the southern part of the island.
Yeah, that's
this is
right.
a beauty.
That particular photo I took in a very chilly December. I remember standing in the parking lot when all the puddles were frozen. I was thinking to myself, what am I doing? It's like -5 and I'm getting changed in the car park. But the water was really crystal clear that day, and there were lots of these big sunflower stars around. And I love trying to compose pictures with multiple species there, so it's like capturing an underwater landscape.
We have a lovely shot of you here in your snorkel suit and with a basket star, or a brittle star, I think is the other word for it. What a beautiful, lacy, gorgeous star.
Yeah, brittle stars are amazing. So as you say, so there are brittle stars and there are sea stars. There are lots of different types of brittle stars. And so a basket star is one type of brittle star, but I think, are the most spectacular. These are not common. I've only ever seen one in the South Island off the coast of Saturna, which is one of the Gulf Islands. Most of the basket stars I've seen have been up in the North Island, where there are several spots in my book where they're quite a common find. They're often associated with a deeper water species, but I found several locations that you can get to out of Port McNeill and Port Hardy, where in the top 5 meters they're quite common, and they're almost mythical because they have these ever branching arms. It's sort of like a fractal pattern. And I remember when I saw my very first basket star, it almost became a marital moment, because we have a small zodiac boat, my husband and I, and we had been out exploring. We'd been out. It's a long day. We were heading back to the hotel. It had started to rain, and so we were sort of keen to get back. But there was a particular location I was keen to just quickly scope out for the next day. So I asked my husband, okay, can you just pause here for 2 minutes? I'm just going to quickly get in and see if this is worth coming back to. I jumped in, and immediately I saw this basket star, and I couldn't believe my eyes. And so my very patient husband waited in the boat in the rain whilst I couldn't tear myself away from this first basket star that I saw. It was a really profound, magical moment.
He was having his own marital moment. When is she going to be coming up here?
Yeah, my husband is very patient and long-suffering with my snorkel obsession. He snorkels too, so he understands where it comes from.
Very good. The other one that I really love is this rainbow star that you've captured with your little camera. It's a beauty. Where was that one observed?
Yeah, so rainbow stars are very common along the Souk coastline. So this morning where I was, again, I probably saw 20 rainbow stars. So it's really interesting how these species can sometimes be quite concentrated in a certain location, and then you go 10, 20 kilometers further up the coast and you just don't see them anymore. So I find this fascinating to try to understand why it is that they like this one particular cove or this one particular beach, and then you go a little bit further and obviously they're not so keen on the topography, or the food sources are not right, or the currents aren't right. So this, again, in my book, one of the things that I do is on each of the locations, I list the signature species, so that if people are on the hunt for seeing a particular anemone or a particular type of sea star, that they can look through the book and they can figure out where they're going to have the best chance. Now, of course, nothing is ever guaranteed in Mother Nature, but gives them maybe an idea of where to go if they're after seeing a particular thing.
I really appreciated how you laid that out too in your book, Sara. You've got the maps, and then on each location, each of the 5 locations, various areas, you also have a critter list. You list all the wonderful critters that you'll see in that area. So very, very easy to follow that guide. It's beautiful. The rose star is the other one that I want to talk about, this beauty. Gorgeous. The lighting on this too, like, was that just natural light?
All natural light, yeah. So I don't use the flash on my camera, because I find that if there's any particulates in the water, it generates a lot of backscatter. So yes, I'm very, very rarely using any additional lighting. Yes, and that's again the joy of snorkeling, is that you are in that top part of the water column. So even on a cloudy day, there's usually plenty of natural light coming down.
Now, you mentioned location as well for some of these sea stars. The Royston wrecks, sort of mid-island near Royston, I guess those are shipwrecks. Am I correct? And then the ochre stars that we see on those, we've got a beautiful shot here of you snorkeling there. Tell us about that.
Yes, so the Royston wrecks are really a very special location to try to visit. So shipwrecks are very popular with scuba divers, but usually snorkelers don't have the opportunity, because ships usually, sink in much deeper water. But this is a natural breakwater that was generated, as you say, just off the coast of Royston. And so there are about a dozen ships that were deliberately sunk, and there are all sorts of different types of vessels, and they're in relatively shallow water. So at low tide, you can actually see them poking up. Even as a landlubbing spectator, you can see the rusty hulls of these old skeletons poking up through the water. And then as a snorkeler, you can move around the wrecks. You have to be careful because they are rusty. You don't want to touch them. You don't want to risk getting a cut or anything like that. But they're in as little as kind of 3 meters of water. So yes, you can kind of dive down and explore. And they're covered with lots of plumose anemones, and then yes, lots of ochre stars. And the ochre stars are probably one of the real signature sea stars of our coastline. So many people will have seen wall-to-wall purple ochre stars in the intertidal zone, but they had quite a tough time of it around 10 years ago. There was the sea star wasting disease, which really decimated many species, and the ochre stars were certainly very hard hit. So it's great to see that species in particular has rebounded, and I see a lot of ochre stars around again now.
Very nice. And the giant Pacific octopus. Seriously, you can see those while you're snorkeling? Wow.
Yeah. So every time I've seen a giant Pacific octopus, it's always been when I have been at the surface, and it's just been kind of hanging out on the rocks a few feet below me. Now, octopus, they're not common. I've seen them probably 4 or 5 times. But yeah, when you spot them, it's a really, really magical experience. But yes, they will sometimes hang out in very, very shallow water.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to mention, you've probably heard about this, Sara, but there's a move afoot here in BC to have octopus farms. And the BC SPCA and the Green Party have started a petition to ban octopus farming here in BC. So I would encourage viewers to go to the BC SPCA website and sign that petition. It's super easy because that's something we don't want on this coast.
Yeah, I agree. I find it very difficult to kind of reconcile the farming of this animal, which is clearly so intelligent. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, I am a meat eater, so I eat farmed animals, but I won't eat octopus. For exactly this reason.
Mm-hmm. And on Netflix, I don't know if you saw it, but the Octopus Teacher show will give you a whole new appreciation for an octopus and why we don't really need them on our plates. So I'll just put that little plug in there. Now, you mentioned the word a couple times, nudibranch. Nudibranch? Thank you.
Nudibranch, yeah.
We have a beautiful one here, a yellow and white one. That's also one of your signature species here. Now, this one is called the opalescent longhorned nudibranch. Where did you spot this beauty?
That one was at Echo Bay on Saturna Island, and amongst the southern Gulf Islands. Nudibranchs are just incredible. I mean, the diversity, the different shapes and sizes. Some of them have these sort of long frilly bits on them. Others have almost like a feather-like structure. Others are more sort of domed and smooth. They're basically sea slugs, but I think that nomenclature doesn't do justice to the beauty of the nudibranchs. And really, for many snorkelers, the nudies are the favorite thing to see because they are so spectacularly colored. They're really strange animals in many ways. So, for example, they're hermaphroditic. So they have both the male and the female sex organs. And so when they mate, they have to line up kind of head to tail to mate. And then they lay their eggs in these beautiful coiled ribbons. For many of them, so for example, the opalescent or the longhorn nudie that you're looking at there, the long frilly parts, they're called serrata, and that's actually an extension of their digestive tract. So they need this kind of long volume. And they also, some of them, they have little stingers. So they feed, some of the species feed off anemones, which have a sting, and then they use that digested sting in their own bodies to then fend off predators. They're called nudibranchs because the word nudibranch means naked gills, and so they have all of their gill structure on the outside. So in many of the species, you can see like a fluffy tail at the back, which is their gill structure. Yeah, fascinating.
It is fascinating. And you mentioned sting, so this is our cue to bring in the the jellyfish. The beautiful jellyfish that you photographed here. Where was this beauty taken?
That was also along the East Sioux coastline, that one. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At Pachena Bay, I think this one was?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sort of far up the East Sioux coastline, yeah.
And I think this one is called a Medusa jellyfish, the red-eyed Medusa.
Yeah, so this particular visit to Pachena Bay, so we had gone out on our kayaks, and then we were going to snorkel from one of the beaches. And even from our kayaks, we could see that the water was thick with these jellies. These ones are relatively small. They're about an inch, so sort of 1 to 2 centimeters. But we could just see, looking down from the kayaks, they were all around us. And so, yeah, we got to swim in this thick swarm of jellies, which might sound a bit disconcerting, but these don't sting at all. None of the small jellies have a sting, and it's really like being in a David Attenborough documentary. I mean, truly, to see thousands and thousands of these jellies all swimming around you, it's just spectacular.
Wow, this all to me, and of course, it's so silent underwater, isn't it, Sara? So this to me,
yeah, all you hear is your breathing. So this again, another difference with the scuba divers that have got all the crackle of their apparatus. Yeah, all you hear whilst you're breathing on the surface is what's coming from your own body. One of the things that is kind of very noticeable in some places is the sound of the marine traffic. So, for example, if you're anywhere in the Gulf Islands along Boundary Pass and there are these big ships coming through, and you really get a sense of how the whales must be sensitive to all of this marine traffic, because our ears are certainly not designed to be attuned to those underwater frequencies. So yeah, that's another thing that I've become much more aware of in terms of our human impact.
Mm-hmm, very much so. And in your book, you also talk about safety, how to be safe when you're preparing to go out. Current conditions, weather conditions, boating. That is in the area as well, because we want people to be safe when they're out there. Tell us a little bit about your experience just at Saturna Island when you're about to enter the water and you had a spiritual experience with a pod of orcas.
Yeah, so this was relatively early on in our snorkeling career, my husband and I. So we have a house on Saturna, and we had gone down to a very, very special part of the island called East Point. And this is well known to be on the whale trail, as it were. So the orcas passed by this particular spot. Anyway, we were sort of all suited up and ready, literally ready to jump in, when the entirety of J-Pod just kind of came around the corner. And so we decided to pause on the shore and watch them from the shore. So of course there are very strict rules about interacting with marine mammals. So it's very clear that you can't approach marine mammals. So that's not just whales, but also seals and sea lions as well. But also common sense dictates that you wouldn't go and play out in the road and with buses going past, and so you certainly not jump in front of a whole pod of orcas as they're coming past. So we had a spectacular view from the shore, because the coastline there, it's a very steep wall, and so they swim very close to the shore. You can literally just look down on them as they swim past.
And Zara, how many were in J-Pod that day? How many orcas did you see?
Many tens, many tens. It took about 20 minutes for the whole family to make its way past us.
Oh, how beautiful. Just describing your experience, underwater and seeing all the beauty that's just, like a meter or so below the surface. It sounds to me like an underwater meditation. Instead of doing the downward dog, you're doing the downward dogfish.
It really is. I think that for many people, once they've experienced it, they get hooked very quickly. For some people, it's as you say, a sort of a meditative experience because it is being transported to a different world. For other people, it's more of an athletic experience. So if they want to practice their diving skills and maybe try and get ever deeper, so sort of more in the free diving world. For some people, they love the photography aspect of it. So it gives different people different things. But certainly there is this sense of being really surrounded in a fully three-dimensional way by nature.
Yeah. And Zara, have you ever been stung, bitten, or run over by a boat? Has it been fairly safe for you?
Thankfully not. No, and I've never had any close calls. Certainly not in these waters. I think the worst I had was, once in Hawaii, a wave knocked me onto an urchin. I got some urchin spines in my foot, but I've not had anything like that around here. There's not too much that's really harmful. So, I mean, a few spiky things like urchins. So, you obviously don't want to go grabbing an urchin with your bare hands. That's going to end up in a lot of finger soreness. We mentioned the jellies. There are a couple of jellies with a mild sting. One, which is the lion's mane, has a slightly nastier sting, so you have to be a bit aware of that one. But for the most part, you're covered in neoprene, so the chance of actually being stung. The other potential threats, if you call it that. So sometimes sea lions can get a bit boisterous. So I talked about making sure you're always keeping your distance from marine mammals, but sometimes sea lions will approach you. I always get quite freaked out by sea lions, I will admit. They're big creatures. And so if there's some sea lions start to swim around, I tend to make a hasty retreat. But sometimes they try to nip at your fins a bit, at your flippers. But really, it's not like we don't have sharks that are going to kind of come and seek you out and bite you, and the orcas aren't interested in coming to find you as food. We're not on their menu. So no.
Sara, I'm afraid we have to make a hasty retreat here. We got lost in your beautiful book here and the stories of your snorkeling around Vancouver Island. Sara, I think you're my favorite aquaholic.
This is a great term. Yes, I should definitely refer to myself as an aquaholic.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us on Coast Connection, Sara, and for sharing your beautiful book with the world. It's been really nice to have you here, and I wish you safe snorkeling and blue skies and calm seas.
Oh, thanks for having me, Liz.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. And I hope this has inspired you not only to get the book, but maybe get wet too. Get out there and do a bit of duck diving yourself. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on Coast Connections.